Madame Han sat alone at a window table in the Sky Lounge. The large glass window next to her showed the curve of Earth below. Blue oceans and white clouds made a pretty picture, but Madame Han barely noticed it. She was too busy with her work. As the head of Stellar Dynamics, she had many important things to do. Her company built ships that traveled between stars. They made a lot of money, and Madame Han made sure everything ran well. She wore an expensive white suit that showed her high status. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, not a single strand out of place. The Sky Lounge was on Orbital Station 12, a large space station where ships from Earth and other planets came to trade and do business. The lounge was a place for rich and important people. The walls were white and clean. The tables were made of real wood, very rare in space. Soft music played in the background. Madame Han frowned and tapped her finger on the table. She had been waiting for 7 minutes. This was too long. Her time was valuable. Every minute she waited was money lost. She looked around for a server. The lounge was not very full today. A warning about solar flares had made many people stay home. Solar flares were big bursts of energy from the sun that could damage ships and equipment. The station had shields to protect it, but people were still careful. Jisoo moved quickly between the few occupied tables. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and a kind face. Her navy blue uniform marked her as a service worker, one of thousands who kept the station running. She carried a tray with drinks to a table across the room. Madame Han watched her with narrow eyes. The girl seemed to be the only server working today. That was no excuse for slow service, Madame Han thought. The Sky Lounge charged high prices. They should provide good service no matter what. Jisoo noticed Madame Han stare and quickly finish with her other customers. She hurried over to Madame Han's table and bowed politely. "I am very sorry for the wait, Madam," Jisoo said. Her voice was soft but clear. "We are short on staff today because of the solar flare warnings. What can I bring you?" Madame Han barely looked up from her tablet. The screen showed numbers and graphs about her company's latest project. She did not like being interrupted. "Green tea," she said shortly. "Premium Earthside blend. And be quick about it." Jisoo nodded respectfully despite Madame Han's rude tone. "Yes, madam. Right away." As Jisoo walked away, Madame Han went back to her work. She was planning a new trade route to the colony on Proxima b, the closest planet outside our solar system. It would make her company even richer. She did not think about Jisoo again until the young woman returned with her tea. Jisoo placed a small black teapot and a matching cup on the table. Steam rose from the spout of the teapot. Next to it, she placed a small plate with 2 sweet rice cakes, a free extra that came with all tea orders. "Here is your premium Earthside green tea, madam," Jisoo said. "This blend comes from the mountains in what was once called Japan. The leaves are picked by hand and—" "I know how to drink tea, girl." Madame Han cut her off with a wave of her hand. "That will be all." Jisoo stopped talking but did not leave. She held out a small payment tablet. "Would you like to authorize payment now, madam? The system suggests a standard gratuity of 15% for—" "No gratuity," Madame Han said firmly. She placed her thumb on the payment screen, and it glowed green as it read her print. "Gratuities encourage mediocrity. Your wages should be enough." Jisoo's face stayed calm, but something changed in her eyes. A small spark of something, hurt, maybe, or anger, flashed quickly and then was gone. She bowed again, lower this time. "Thank you for your patronage, Madame Han." Madame Han was already looking back at her tablet. Then she realized something and looked up sharply. "How do you know my name?" she asked. Jisoo smiled slightly. "All high-level corporate executives are in our system, madam. For security purposes, we are trained to recognize important guests." "I see," Madame Han said, not entirely satisfied with the answer. "Well, as I said, that will be all." Jisoo nodded and walked away. Madame Han watched her go for a moment, noticing how the young woman's shoulders were tense despite her calm face. Then Madame Han dismissed her from her mind. Service workers were not important. They were like the machines that kept the station running, necessary but not worth thinking about. Madame Han poured her tea and took a sip. It was perfect, hot but not burning, with a grassy flavor that reminded her of Earth. Not that she spent much time on Earth anymore. Her work kept her traveling between planets and stations. Outside the window, a small warning light began to flash. The solar flare warning was getting more serious. The station's AI made an announcement over the speakers. Attention all guests and personnel. A Class C solar flare has been detected. Station shields are at maximum. There is no immediate danger, but all non-essential movement between sections is temporarily restricted. Thank you for your cooperation. Some people in the lounge looked worried. A few got up to leave. Madame Han stayed where she was. She had been through many solar flares in her 60 years. The station was safe. She had more important things to worry about. Her tablet pinged with a message. It was from her son, Todd. She opened it and read, "Mother, I'm returning from the Proxima mission next week. I have news to share. Can we have dinner at your place when I return? There's someone special I want you to meet." Madame Han frowned slightly. Taiwan was her only child. His father had died when Taiwan was just 10 years old. She had raised him alone while building her company. Now he was 30 and a successful diplomat, representing Earth to other colonies. But someone special could only mean one thing. Taiwan wanted to introduce her to a romantic partner. Madame Han was not sure how she felt about this. Taiwan was the heir to stellar dynamics. His choice of partner was important for the company's future. She wrote back, "Dinner at my place is fine. Send details when you have your exact arrival time." She did not mention the someone special. She would deal with that when the time came. As she finished her tea, the lights in the lounge dimmed slightly. The station was diverting power to the shields. The solar flare must be getting closer. Jisoo was helping an elderly couple to their feet. "Please, let me show you to the shelter area. It's just a precaution, but you'll be more comfortable there." The couple thanked her and followed her out. Jisoo glanced at Madame Han as they passed her table. "The shelter area is open to all guests, madam," she said politely. "I can escort you there when I return." "That won't be necessary," Madame Han said. "I'm leaving soon anyway." Jisoo nodded and continued on with the elderly couple. Madame Han watched them go. The girl was good at her job, she had to admit. Taking care of guests during a potential emergency was important. Perhaps she should have left a small tip after all. But no, that would set a bad example. People should do their jobs well because it was their duty, not because they expected extra rewards. Madame Han gathered her things and stood up. She would return to her private ship now. It was docked at the station and had its own shields. She would be safer there, and she could continue her work without interruptions. As she walked out of the lounge, she passed Jisoo returning from the shelter area. The young woman bowed politely. "Safe travels, Madame Han," she said. Madame Han nodded but said nothing. She had already forgotten the encounter as she walked away. She had no way of knowing that this brief meeting would change her life in ways she could never imagine. 2 months passed since Madame Han's visit to Orbital Station 12. She was now back in her large apartment on Earth. Her home took up the entire top floor of a tall building in New Seoul. From her windows, she could see the whole city and the rebuilt Han River that ran through it. Tonight was important. Her son Taiwan was coming for dinner. He had just returned from his 6-month mission to Proxima b, the human colony on the nearest star system to Earth. Taiwan worked as a diplomat, helping Earth and the colony stay friendly with each other. Madame Han stood in her living room, checking that everything was perfect. The walls were white with real paintings hanging on them. The floor was made of dark wood. Large plants stood in the corners, bringing a bit of nature inside. A table was set with the best dishes and real candles. Is everything ready? She asked her house eye. Yes, Madam Han, the AI replied in a soft voice. Dinner will be served at exactly 7 o'clock. The temperature is set to your preferred level. Would you like me to play some music? Not yet, Madam Han said. She was nervous, though she would never admit it. Taiwan had said he was bringing someone special to meet her. This was unusual. Taiwan rarely brought anyone to her home. The door announced a visitor with a gentle chime. Madam Han smoothed her dark blue dress and stood straight. The door slid open. Taiwan stepped in first. He was tall and handsome in his diplomatic uniform, which was black with silver buttons. His face lit up when he saw his mother. Mother, he said warmly, crossing the room to hug her. Madam Han allowed the hug but did not fully return it. She was not comfortable with too much physical affection. You look well, she said, stepping back to look at him. The mission must have been successful. It was. Taiwan smiled. But that's not why I'm happy. Mother, I want you to meet someone very special to me. He turned back toward the door and held out his hand. A young woman stepped forward and took it. She wore a simple but elegant silver dress that matched the buttons on Taiwan's uniform. Her short black hair framed a face that was. Madam Han froze. She knew this face. Mother, this is Ji-Soo Kim, Taiwan said proudly. She works in the diplomatic corps as a language specialist. She helped create the new treaty between Earth and Proxima B. We've been together for 6 months now. Ji-Soo smiled and bowed politely to Madam Han. It's a pleasure to meet you formally, Madam Han. Taiwan has told me so much about you. The way she said formally made it clear. This was the same Ji-Soo who had served her tea on Orbital Station 12. The same Ji-Soo she had refused to tip. You? Madam Han couldn't find the right words. Taiwan looked confused. Do you two know each other? Ji-Soo spoke before Madam Han could answer. I believe I served Madam Han tea once when I was working undercover on Orbital Station 12. She turned to Madam Han. You probably don't remember. It was just a brief meeting. But Madam Han did remember. She remembered every detail now. Undercover? She managed to ask. Taiwan laughed. Mother, Ji-Soo is amazing. She speaks 12 Earth languages and 3 alien languages. She often works undercover in public places like stations and spaceports. She listens for information that might help with diplomatic work. It's a common practice, Ji-Soo explained. The best way to learn what people really think is to serve them food and drinks. People don't guard their words around service workers. They think we're not important enough to matter. Madam Han felt her face grow warm. Those words hit too close to home. Please, come sit down, she said stiffly. Dinner should be ready soon. They moved to the dining table. Taiwan pulled out a chair for Ji-Soo before taking his own seat. How did you two meet? Madam Han asked, trying to sound normal. Taiwan and Ji-Soo smiled at each other. We met on the ship to Proxima B, Taiwan said. I thought she was just a server in the ship's dining room. I was working on some difficult language problems for the treaty, and I was stuck. He was talking to himself in the dining room late at night. Ji-Soo continued. I heard him struggling with a Proximan phrase. The night staff were all diplomats working undercover, so I helped him. She not only fixed my translation, but she showed me a completely new way to approach the treaty, Taiwan said with pride in his voice. The next day, she was introduced as the chief language expert for the mission. I couldn't believe it. Your son was very surprised, Ji-Soo laughed. But he recovered quickly. He asked me to dinner that same day. The house AI announced that dinner was ready. 3 small robots brought out the food and placed it on the table. There was traditional Korean food, bulgogi, kimchi, and various side dishes, as well as some Proximan foods that looked like blue rice and purple vegetables. I took the liberty of adding some Proximan dishes to the menu, Taiwan said. Ji-Soo has become quite skilled at preparing them. The blue rice is particularly good with the bulgogi, Jisoo suggested. Madame Han took a small portion of the blue rice. It was strange to see food that wasn't from Earth. She had never bothered to try alien foods before. So, she said after a few bites, "You are a diplomat, not a server." "I'm both, in a way," Jisoo said. "My official title is Xenolinguistics Specialist and Cultural Liaison, but I still believe in service. Some of my best diplomatic work happens when people don't know I'm a diplomat." Jisoo comes from a simple family, Ta-won added. Her parents run a small noodle shop in Old Busan. She worked her way through school. "Working in service taught me a lot about people," Jisoo said. "How they treat others says more about them than any words they might speak." Madame Han felt uncomfortable again. Was Jisoo referring to how Madame Han had treated her? She decided to change the subject. "Tell me about the treaty," she said. "How will it affect trade between Earth and Proxima b?" This was safer ground. Business was something Madame Han understood well. As they ate, Ta-won and Jisoo explained the new treaty. It would open new trade routes and make it easier for ships like those made by Stellar Dynamics to travel between the worlds. "Actually," Jisoo said, "I studied your company's ships when preparing for the treaty negotiations. Stellar Dynamics has the most efficient engines for long-distance travel." "You know about ship engines?" Madame Han was surprised. "Jisoo knows about everything," Ta-won said with a smile. "She has degrees in both xenolinguistics and quantum engineering. The Proximans respect her because she understands both their language and their technology." Madame Han looked at Jisoo with new eyes. This young woman was far more than she had seemed on the space station. She wasn't just a server who happened to know Ta-won. She was a highly educated diplomat with technical knowledge. As dinner continued, Madame Han found herself warming slightly to Jisoo, despite her initial shock. The young woman was smart and well-spoken. She clearly cared for Ta-won, and he was happier than Madame Han had seen him in years. After dinner, they moved to the living room for tea. As the house AI brought the tea service, Jisoo caught Madame Han's eye. "Premium Earthside blend," Jisoo said with a small smile. "I remember you prefer it." Madame Han nodded stiffly. "Yes, thank you." When Ta-won left the room briefly to take a call from his office, Jisoo turned to Madame Han. "I want to be clear about something," she said in a low voice. "I didn't seek out your son because of our meeting on the station. I didn't even know he was your son until after we had been dating for several weeks." "Why should I believe that?" Madame Han asked. "Because it's the truth," Jisoo said simply. "I'm not interested in games or revenge, Madame Han. I care about your son. That's all." Before Madame Han could respond, Ta-won returned. "Good news," he said. "The Proximan ambassador wants to meet with both of us tomorrow." Jisoo. They're pleased with the treaty implementation. As they prepared to leave later that evening, Ta-won hugged his mother again. "We'll visit again soon," he promised. "I'm glad you finally met Jisoo." Jisoo bowed politely to Madame Han. "It was a pleasure to see you again, Madame Han. Thank you for dinner." As they stood at the door, Ta-won looked happily at both women. "My two favorite people," he said. "I'm so glad you get along." After they left, Madame Han stood alone in her large apartment. She felt shaken. The universe had just played a strange joke on her. The server she had dismissed as unimportant was now dating her son. And worse, Jisoo knew exactly who Madame Han was and how she had behaved. "More tea, madame?" the house AI asked. "No," Madame Han said. "Bring me something stronger. I need to think." 3 weeks after the dinner with Ta-won and Jisoo, Madame Han sat in her office at Stellar Dynamics headquarters. The tall building stood in the center of New Seoul, its glass walls shining in the morning sun. From her office on the top floor, Madame Han could see the whole city. But today she was not looking at the view. She was staring at her screen with worry on her face. Something was very wrong with her company's computer systems. "How bad is it?" she asked Jun, her chief of security. Jun was an older man with gray hair who had worked for Madame Han for 20 years. Jun's face was grim. Very bad, madam. Someone has broken into our main computer system. They have access to all our trade secrets, customer lists, and ship designs, and they have broken our quantum locks. Quantum locks were the strongest security in the galaxy. They used the strange rules of quantum physics to protect information. If someone had broken the quantum locks, they were dealing with a very skilled enemy. Do we know who did this? Madame Han asked. Not yet, Jun said, but we think it might be Nova Corp. They are our biggest competitor, and they have tried to steal from us before. Madame Han stood up and walked to the window. Nova Corp had been trying to beat Stellar Dynamics for years. If they had stolen Stellar's ship designs and customer lists, they could ruin her company. We need to call an emergency meeting of the board, she said, and we need to find a quantum security expert right away. 6 hours later, Madame Han faced the angry board of directors. The board was made up of 12 people who represented the company's major investors. They sat around a large table, all looking worried and upset. This is a disaster, said Director Park, an old man who had been with the company since the beginning. Our stock price has fallen 30% since the news got out. Customers are leaving us for our competitors. We need to do something now. I agree, said Director Lee, a younger woman who represented the newest investors. We need someone to take responsibility for this failure. Madame Han, as CEO, the security of the company is your job. Other directors nodded. Madame Han understood what they were saying. They wanted her to resign as CEO. They wanted her to take the blame for the security breach. I understand your concerns, Madame Han said calmly, though inside she was very upset. But I believe I can fix this problem. I have called in a team of security experts who will start work today. Who are these experts? Director Park asked. We need the best. Before Madame Han could answer, the door opened. Taiwan walked in, dressed in his diplomatic uniform. Behind him came Jisoo, wearing a simple black suit. Mother, Taiwan said formally, I came as soon as I heard about the problem. I've brought someone who can help. The directors looked confused. They knew Taiwan as Madame Han's son and the future head of the company, but they didn't know Jisoo. Madame Han was just as surprised to see them. Taiwan, this is a private board meeting. We are discussing a serious security breach. That's why we're here, Taiwan said. He turned to the board. Directors, let me introduce Jisoo Kim. Before she joined the diplomatic corps, she was the lead quantum security expert for the Earth Defense Network. She designed many of the security systems that protect Earth's most important information. Jisoo bowed politely to the board. It's an honor to meet you all. I understand you're facing a serious security breach. I believe I can help. Director Lee looked skeptical. No offense, Ms. Kim, but our systems use the most advanced quantum encryption in the solar system. We need experts who understand this technology. Jisoo smiled slightly. With respect, Director Lee, I designed the base code for that encryption 5 years ago, when I worked with the Defense Network. I know it better than anyone. The room went quiet. Even Madame Han was surprised. She knew Jisoo was smart and had worked in security, but she didn't know the young woman had created the very encryption systems that protected Stellar Dynamics. Is this true? Director Park asked Taiwan. Completely true, Taiwan confirmed. Jisoo is being modest. She received the Global Science Award for her work on quantum encryption before she was 25. She changed careers to diplomacy because she wanted a new challenge. The board members looked at each other. Then Director Park spoke. Ms. Kim, if you can help us fix this security breach and find who is responsible, Stellar Dynamics would be very grateful. Jisoo nodded. I'll need full access to your systems and a small team of your best technical people. We should start right away. Every minute we wait, your company loses more. The meeting ended with new hope. Jisoo immediately went with Jun to the security center to begin work. Tae-won stayed behind with his mother in the boardroom. "Why didn't you tell me about Jisoo's background in security?" Madam Han asked him when they were alone. Tae-won looked surprised. "I thought I did. I told you she had degrees in xenolinguistics and quantum engineering. Did you think quantum engineering was just a hobby?" Madam Han felt embarrassed. She had heard him mention Jisoo's qualifications at dinner, but she hadn't really been listening. She had been too busy being upset about Jisoo being the server from the space station. "Thank you for bringing her," Madam Han said stiffly. "The company needs all the help it can get right now." Tae-won looked at his mother with concern. "Are you okay? The board was pretty harsh with you." Madam Han straightened her back. "I've dealt with worse in my career. I'll be fine if we can fix this security problem." "If anyone can fix it, Jisoo can," Tae-won said with confidence. For the next 3 days, Jisoo worked almost without stopping. She slept only a few hours each night on a cot in the security center. Madam Han checked on the progress several times each day, bringing food and drinks for the team. On the morning of the 4th day, Madam Han arrived at her office to find Jisoo waiting for her. The young woman looked tired but satisfied. "We found the source of the breach," Jisoo said without preamble, "and we've closed all the security holes. Your systems are now safer than before." Madam Han felt a wave of relief. "That's excellent news. Who was behind the attack?" "It was NovaCorp, as you suspected," Jisoo said, "but they had help from inside Stellar Dynamics." She handed Madam Han a datapad. On the screen was a picture of Director Lee. "Director Lee?" Madam Han was shocked. "She's been feeding information to NovaCorp." Jisoo nodded. "For at least 2 years, she has been selling small bits of information to them. This big attack was her final job before she planned to leave your company. We found messages between her and NovaCorp's head of research." Madam Han sat down heavily in her chair. Director Lee had always been difficult, always questioning Madam Han's decisions, but she never suspected the woman was a traitor. "We've collected all the evidence," Jisoo continued. "It's enough to have her arrested and to sue NovaCorp for stealing trade secrets. I've already sent copies to the Global Trade Commission and the Earth Police." Madam Han looked at Jisoo with new respect. In just a few days, this young woman had not only fixed a security disaster, but had found the person responsible. She had probably saved Stellar Dynamics from ruin. "Thank you," Madam Han said simply. "The company owes you a great debt." Jisoo shook her head. "I didn't do it for the company. I did it for Tae-won. He loves you, and he cares about this company. It will be his someday." Madam Han was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her for days. "Why are you helping me? After how I treated you on the space station, you could have refused." Jisoo looked directly at Madam Han. "Do you remember what I said about service work teaching me about people? I learned that how people treat servers shows their true character. Yes, you were rude to me. You didn't tip me. But that doesn't mean you deserve to lose your company." She stood up to leave. "Besides, I'm not doing this for a tip. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And because the mother of the man I love should see me for who I really am, not just as a server who wasn't worth her time." As Jisoo walked to the door, Madam Han called after her. "Jisoo, wait." The young woman turned back. "Would you join me for lunch today?" Madam Han asked. "I think we should talk more. And I'd like to get to know you better." Jisoo smiled. "I'd like that, Madam Han. But first, I need to sleep for about 10 hours. How about tomorrow?" Madam Han nodded. "Tomorrow is perfect." "And Jisoo, please call me Min. Madam Han is too formal for family." Jisoo's smile grew wider. "Thank you, Min. I'll see you tomorrow." After Jisoo left, Madam Han turned to look out her window at the city below. For the first time in weeks, she felt hopeful. Her company would survive. And perhaps she had found not just a quantum security expert, but a new friend in Jisoo. Someone who could see past her cold exterior to the person inside. It was strange how life works sometimes, Madame Han thought. If she had tipped that server on Orbital Station 12, would anything be different now? 6 months had passed since the security crisis at Stellar Dynamics. Many things had changed in that time. Director Lee had been arrested and was now in prison for corporate spying. Nova Corp had paid a large fine for stealing trade secrets, and Stellar Dynamics was doing better than ever, with new security systems that kept all their information safe. But the biggest change was in Madame Han herself. Today, Min Han stood on the landing pad at the top of the Stellar Dynamics building. A sleek silver spaceship sat ready for takeoff, its engines humming softly. This was the newest ship model her company had built, called the Starhawk. It was specially made for the important trip Min was about to take. "Is everything ready?" she asked Jun, who stood beside her. "Yes, Madame Han," Jun replied. "The ship is fueled, and the crew is ready. We're just waiting for the last passengers." Min nodded. She was dressed in a formal blue suit with the Stellar Dynamics symbol, a silver star with wings, on the chest. Her hair was still pulled back neatly, but her face seemed softer somehow, less stern. "There they are," Jun said, pointing to the elevator door that had just opened. Taiwan stepped out, wearing his black diplomatic uniform with extra medals and ribbons for this special trip. Beside him walked Jisoo, dressed in a formal diplomatic outfit of deep blue with silver trim. They were talking and smiling as they walked toward the ship. "Mother," Taiwan said warmly when they reached Min. "The Proximan ambassador is already on board. Are we ready to go?" "Yes," Min said. "Everything is prepared for the journey." Today was a big day. They were traveling to Proxima B for the signing of a new trade agreement between Earth and the colony world. This agreement would allow Stellar Dynamics to build a new shipyard in the Proxima system. It would make the company even bigger and more successful. The three of them boarded the ship together. Inside, the Starhawk was as beautiful as it was outside. The walls were smooth and white. The floor was soft under their feet. Large windows showed the city below and the blue sky above. The main cabin was set up for the journey to Proxima B, which would take 3 days even with the ship's fast engines. Comfortable chairs were arranged around a large table. On one chair sat a tall, thin being with blue-tinted skin and large, dark eyes, the Proximan ambassador. "Ambassador Kree," Min said, bowing in the Proximan way, with her hands open at her sides. "Welcome aboard the Starhawk. We are honored by your presence." The ambassador stood and returned the bow. "The honor is mine, Madame Han. Your new ship is impressive." The translator on the ambassador's neck made their words sound almost human, with just a slight metallic edge. "Please call me Min," she said with a smile. The ambassador's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Proximan culture valued formal titles, and for Min to offer the use of her first name was a sign of great respect and friendship. "Then you must call me Zell," the ambassador replied. They all sat down as the ship's captain announced they were ready for takeoff. The Starhawk rose smoothly into the air, turned toward the sky, and began to climb. The city below grew smaller and smaller until it was just a pattern of lights and shapes. Then the blue sky darkened to black as they left Earth's atmosphere and entered space. Once they were in space, a server brought drinks for everyone. Min noticed the young man who served them. He wore a uniform with the Stellar Dynamics symbol on it and moved with quiet efficiency as he placed glasses on the table. "Thank you," Min said when he handed her a glass. She looked at his name tag. "Thank you, Owen." The server looked surprised but pleased. "You're welcome, Madame Han. Please let me know if you need anything else." He bowed and left the cabin. Jisoo, who was sitting across from Min, gave her a small smile. She had noticed Min's interaction with the server. 6 months ago, Min would not have bothered to thank a server or use their name. But much had changed since then. After the security crisis, Min had spent time getting to know Jisoo. They had many lunches together. Min had learned about Jisoo's background, her parents who ran the small noodle shop, her hard work to get an education, her brilliant career first in security and then in diplomacy. And Min had changed because of it. She had started to see the people who worked for her, all of them, from top executives to cleaners and servers, as real people with their own stories and value. The view is remarkable, Ambassador Zal said, looking out the window at the stars. It is, Min agreed, but it's the people who make the journey worthwhile. Taiwan looked at his mother with surprise and then smiled. This was another change in Min. She now often said things that showed she valued people more than things or success. They spent the next few hours discussing the trade agreement. The document would create new jobs for both humans and Proximans. Ships built in the new Proxima shipyard would carry goods and people between the two star systems faster and safer than ever before. When they finished the business talk, they ate dinner together. The food was a mix of Earth dishes and Proximan cuisine. Min tried everything, even the strange purple food that the ambassador particularly enjoyed. After dinner, Taiwan and the ambassador went to another part of the ship to discuss some diplomatic matters. Min and Jisoo were left alone in the main cabin. "You've changed," Jisoo said after a moment of comfortable silence. Min looked at her. "Have I?" Jisoo nodded. 6 months ago, you wouldn't have thanked a server or remembered their name. You wouldn't have tried Proximan food. And you certainly wouldn't have said that people are more important than the view of space. Min thought about this. "I suppose you're right. I have changed. May I ask why?" Jisoo said. Min was quiet for a moment, thinking about her answer. "When I was young, I believed that success meant having power and money. I worked very hard to build stellar dynamics. I pushed people away. I didn't think relationships mattered." She looked out at the stars. "But then my son brought home a young woman who showed me I was wrong. A woman I had once dismissed as just a server, who turned out to be brilliant and kind, who saved my company not for money or power, but because it was the right thing to do." Jisoo smiled but said nothing, letting Min continue. "I realized I had been measuring success all wrong," Min said. "True success isn't just about money or power. It's about connections with other people. It's about treating everyone with respect, no matter what job they do." She turned back to Jisoo. "So thank you. You taught me an important lesson." "You're welcome," Jisoo said softly. "But you know, I didn't do it on purpose. I was just being myself." "That's what makes it so powerful," Min replied. "You didn't try to teach me. You just lived by example." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars outside the window. Then Min spoke again. "I've been thinking about something. When we return from Proxima B, Stellar Dynamics is going to start a new program. We're going to make sure all our workers, including service staff, get better pay and benefits. We're also going to create a scholarship fund for young people who want to study science or engineering." "That sounds wonderful," Jisoo said. "What made you decide to do that?" Min smiled. "I realized that somewhere out there might be another young person like you, smart and capable, but without many opportunities. I want to find those people and help them reach their potential." Just then, Taiwan and the ambassador returned to the cabin. Taiwan had a big smile on his face. "Mother, Jisoo, we have something to tell you," he said, taking Jisoo's hand. "With Ambassador Zal's blessing, we've decided to hold our wedding ceremony on Proxima B after the trade agreement is signed." Jisoo looked surprised. "Taiwan, we were going to wait to tell them." Taiwan laughed. "I couldn't wait. Mother, is that okay with you?" Min stood up and did something very unlike her old self. She hugged both Taiwan and Jisoo. "It's more than okay," she said. "It's perfect." Ambassador Zal watched with interest. "In my culture, we believe that when two families join, the stars themselves take notice. Today, I think the stars are indeed watching." As the Starhawk continued its journey through space, Min-Han looked at her son and his future wife with happiness. The stars outside were beautiful, but they were nothing compared to the connections between people. Connections she had once thought unimportant, but now knew were the most valuable thing in the universe. Strange, she thought, how a simple decision, not tipping a server, had led to such profound changes in her life. It just showed that every action, no matter how small, could have unexpected results. And in this case, the result was better than she could have ever imagined.